Hello Team FD and welcome to Winners and Losers World Cup edition. Now on this show we normally discuss a winner and a loser, but it feels a little bit redundant talking about losers when England won so emphatically. So we're going to keep it positive and then we'll move on to the starting 11 against the US because England might have to manage a couple of injury concerns going into match day 2. We've just watched the US play Wales as well, so we're going to pinpoint a few areas that we think England can expose. But before we do that, let's start, like I said, with some positive vibes and go to our winners. Now, plenty of candidates for this in such an emphatic, getting such an emphatic result in a really good performance. Sterling, first World Cup goal. Rashford, first World Cup goal. Kane, 2 assists. Actually, the first England player to register 2 assists in a World Cup game since David Beckham against Trinidad and Tobago in 2006. But we're going to stick with 2 or 3 standouts. We're going to start with Harry Maguire.
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, I was quite hot in the build-up to this tournament that I thought would be a massive risk to start him. Has that really been disproved as crazy? We don't really know yet because of the standard of opposition. Having said that, though, you've got to give credit where it's due. I thought Maguire was really good for the minutes he was on the pitch. And then to find out afterwards, which we'll come on to later, that he was actually feeling ill during the game. Massive credit to him. That line-breaking pass, which led to Bellingham's goal, the first goal. He also assisted Saka's first goal with that knockdown. And was just generally a massive nuisance from corners as well. Hit the bar as well brilliantly. But I think it feels a bit redundant to not mention Bukayo Saka here. 2 goals, I think the youngest Englishman to score a brace in a World Cup. Was phenomenal this season for Arsenal and has been for a number of months now, but really has taken that to the international stage. And, you know, compared to against Grealish, Foden, Mount, the other sort of competitors to play alongside Sterling and Kane, he's probably actually had the best England record, I would say, in terms of impacting games off the bench. But this was him from the start, really taking control of a game, particularly liked his second goal as well, cutting in a few times before finishing into the bottom left-hand corner. 3 shots, 2 goals, created a chance, also finished with a tackle to his name as well. So a really, really impressive opening to a World Cup from Saka.
Yeah, do you feel like you've got that off your chest now, the bit about Maguire? Because we were going to talk about just Saka, we were going to talk about Bellingham, but you wanted to eat a bit of humble pie, didn't you, mate?
Well, yeah, I was still fairly nervous about Maguire, to be honest, given the lack of football he's played in the build-up. But it has to be taken into account. You know, he went through this test with the eyes of the nation on him. And came through with flying colours, to be totally honest. Obviously, his form last year was a total disaster. I do think it's slightly interesting that we don't really know what he'd be like for Man United this year in a more settled side with a defensive shield in front of him in Casemiro. Maybe his form would have picked up. I just thought it was a gamble to start him. But on this occasion, it came off.
He's winning back the trust of Dougie. Can he win back the trust of the rest of the nation? Let us know your thoughts on Maguire in the comments below. He will be resurfacing in just a minute because, of course, is potentially an injury concern or an illness concern going into the next fixture. But let's talk about the brilliant Jude Bellingham then, McCubbs.
Yeah, I mean, I think you couldn't have asked any more of him in this game, could you? Amazing to see him open the scoring at a World Cup finals for England. He's the second youngest English player to score at a World Cup. I believe Michael Owen must be the youngest. I think he was 18 when he scored that goal against Argentina, wasn't he? The first player born post-2000 for anyone to score at a World Cup. This is obviously his first international goal as well. And it comes after a period where he's really consolidated himself in the side. I think in those Nations League games, a lot of disappointing performances in there. Bellingham was really one of the silver linings, wasn't he? Really took games to a number of teams. And he's obviously been great for Dortmund this season, especially kind of really growing into that more attacking role, hasn't he? And to play alongside Declan Rice, who is, I think, of a much higher calibre than the midfielders he's played alongside so far in his career, you know, it's a really exciting thing to see develop. And I thought actually that whole midfield was great. I thought Declan Rice was incredible for most of the game. I think Mason Mount, particularly in the first half, very influential. But Bellingham, I think, head and shoulders above those two in terms of his overall influence on the game. It was a bit worrying in the first half. He had a poor touch when I think it was Maguire or Stones was passing out from the back to him. Could have cost England the goal if it was a higher quality opposition. Luckily, Iran weren't able to make anything out of it. But I mean, when you look at his numbers, it was just an amazing performance. 92 out of 95 passes he completed. He completed 7 out of 8 long balls as well, 13 balls into the final third. Just really world-class numbers. And yes, Iran, were not good today. I think,
No.
Iran, I don't want to disrespect Iran because they are one of the best teams in Asia. They are 20th in the world, but I think they just had a really bad day at the office today and just didn't get anywhere near England. So he will obviously come up against tougher opposition as this campaign goes on, and even the USA and Wales I think will present that. But he was just so sharp, so proactive in trying to get the ball upfield, and a great header as well. Just really excited to see how he develops as the tournament goes on.
Yeah, like you said, weak opposition, but Southgate seemed to find a really great balance. You already mentioned Declan Rice there, who provided Bellingham with a platform to be a 6, 8, 10 whenever he wanted to, right? He was up and down, an incredible performance, dominated that midfield, like you've said. Iran, yeah, really poor. There's no point singling out any individuals for our losers section, I think. It is worth mentioning that many Iran fans online were pretty pleased with the show of, well, it was seemingly a show of support from the Iran players who didn't choose to sing the national anthem. It appeared to be an act of solidarity with the protesters back home. So I think probably lifted the mood somewhat.
Yeah.
Seeing them a little bit more shared in their outlook, but
also, tough circumstances to play, to embark on a World Cup.
Kind of where I was going with this.
Yeah.
One of the guys we were watching it with said it must be tough mentally to play under those conditions, and I think that was telling as time went on in the game. Let's move on then. Like I said, not going to single out any Iran players, but if Kane and Maguire are injured, not ideal. Not trying to paint us losers in a situation where we've won 6-2, but it is worth unpacking that a little bit more because Kane looked like he had a foot injury. Now, David Ornstein said it was lightly strapped at the end of the game and he was limping when he got back on the bus, so not ideal. He did last 25 minutes from the challenge happening to being taken off, so you'd like to think not super serious, but we shall see. Maybe that'll be clarified by the time this goes live. Maguire, now it appeared to be sort of a concussion or a head injury to start with, but Southgate did say, like you said, he was ill after the game. So let's talk about some possible solutions to those scenarios should they not just, should they not stop. Now, who would you start at centre-back in the absence of Maguire?
It's a difficult one because I'm pretty sure he'll go with Eric Dyer, given the fact that I know he was, out in the international wilderness for quite a while, but he's actually got quite a lot of tournament experience with England. He was quite a crucial member under Roy Hodgson at Euro 2016, I seem to remember, and then was regularly used by Southgate in the World Cup in 2018, of course. And he was the guy that came off the bench today. So it feels like he will go with Eric Dyer. Personally, I think that's a slight risk because we've seen in the last couple of months with Christian Romero's injury at Spurs that Eric Dyer, had a few more mistakes creeping into his game. I would probably go with the man in form, which for me is Ben White. But having said that, he's had most of his form this year at right back with the emergence of Saliba and Gabriel as Arsenal's starting pair. He has been phenomenal as a right back, but he's obviously not going to replace Trippier. We'll talk about Maguire's replacement. And do I trust Ben White to go into an international tournament and instantly shine? Yes, I probably do, given everything we've seen in his career so far. But I've just got a feeling that Southgate is going to go with Eric Dyer, the guy who's got tournament experience.
Interesting. And that backline will face much more pressing, you'd imagine, against Wales, against the USA than they did against Iran. Had a fairly comfortable time of it, distributing out from the back, didn't they? So something to bear in mind. Now, what about Kane and McCubbs? Because our other options, a big downgrade from Kane. Not to disrespect them. Kane is obviously our best player. And if we're going to win the tournament, ideally would have got on the score sheet today, built some momentum, but 2 assists to his name. Brilliant. He's only got 1 assist, by the way, all season for Tottenham. So padding his stats out, so to speak, in the creative department. But what is your plan B?
I think there's options here. I really think there's options here. I think the most simple thing would be like for like Callum Wilson. He looked pretty bright when he came on. Obviously, got an assist. He's obviously a downgrade on Kane, but he is, a number 9. If England need a focal point like that, then I don't think it would be a bad option. However, I think if I was Southgate, I would probably think a little bit more creatively, and I'd probably get Sterling in at centre forward, to be honest. I'd get him to maybe play a little bit more of a false nine kind of role, the kind of thing that we saw him play at Man City at times, and then have Foden on the left. I think that's such a dynamic front three that you've got there. Yes, you're maybe missing that kind of more classic number 9, but we see Kane drop deep a lot. Sterling is fantastic at linking play in those areas. We saw that today as well, drifted in centrally a lot. Obviously was central for the finish, for the finish that Kane put into him. So I'd probably go for that. And if that's not working, then you still have Wilson or probably Rashford, who's probably the more prime candidate to come on 60 minutes and try and kind of destabilise a sitting defence or a tiring defence in that circumstance. So yeah, that's probably what I'd go for.
I quite like the vote of confidence for Sterling, and I know by the time the game had finished that Saka and Bellingham stole a lot of the headlines, but in that first 20 minutes when it was very stop-start, when it was a little bit cagey, I thought Sterling, every time he got the ball, extremely positive, added pace to our attacks, sort of dragged us up the pitch, and there was one little reverse pass around the corner, I think it was to Saka, that was sort of like, I don't know, it was like Sterling had come full circle. He was like a playmaker now. It was great to see, basically. Any variation on McCubbin's plan to make Sterling our point man? Because I know you're quite keen on seeing Marcus Rashford through the middle.
Yeah, I'd potentially be up for it. Although, having said that, Rashford's form has been back this year, playing in a central role, or this season. But over the previous years, he's been much more effective off the left than down the middle. I really enjoyed his finish today. It showed like an unusual amount of composure in the box that we haven't seen always from Rashford when he's presented with those opportunities. But then, would he have a better impact off the bench than Callum Wilson? Potentially. To be honest, I don't think it's a disaster, given what I've seen from USA or Wales, to start Callum Wilson for one game, because hopefully Kane's injury is not too serious. But if I had to have an answer now, I'd probably go with Rashford through the middle. I just think Callum Wilson's so new to the international stage. Rashford, loads of tournament experience, and took his goal really effectively today.
Okay, yeah, I mean, if we have to rest Harry Kane, who do you lot at home start in the England team? Let us know in the comments below. I'm sure even if he is rested, it'll only be for 60, 70 minutes, and he'll be nudging Gareth Southgate to bring him on in that game, of course, is pursuing Wayne Rooney's record, isn't he? Okay, let's move on to our mini sort of USA preview and open up with, where can the USA hurt England? Now, the longer the game went on against Wales, the less obvious this got. But let's start with the midfield then, McCubbs, because there were some promising performances in that first half, weren't there?
Yeah, I mean, like you were saying, Chris, like Iran didn't really offer much of a resistance to England in terms of a pressing game. I think, Dougie, you were saying earlier that England actually completed more tackles than Iran during the match, and it was evident they just weren't really laying a finger on England, and I think that will be different. Tyler Adams in particular, has played in high pressing systems his whole professional career. 6 tackles and interceptions against Wales. I think that was the most on the pitch. He completed all his tackles as well. I think it was pretty telling that he was the midfielder that was kept on as the game went on. When Yunus Musa and Weston McKennie went off, as the game kind of became a bit more chaotic. But Tyler Adams was the guy who was kept on. He also completed the most passes of any midfielder on the night. So, yeah, I think he is potentially the USA's most important player in that sense. And I just think coming up against quite a dynamic and quite a press-heavy midfield, as the US have, is going to be maybe the main difference that England are going to experience. Yeah. I think as good as the England midfield were, like we were saying, I think they had a bit of an easy ride today and they were able to really dictate the tempo of the game without much resistance. I think Adams, Musa and McKennie as a trio will probably try to disrupt that.
And I think you observed when Musa and McKennie came off, the game did become a lot more transitional, didn't it? And so something to think about. I think their midfield options from the bench weaker.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's a big drop off there.
They might have to, be a little bit more tactile with their pressing, because, like I said, downgrade. The whole quality of the game dropped when that 3 was separated. What about in wide areas then, Dukes? Because Pulisic, we know of his quality. He did look like the most technically proficient player on the pitch in this game when he wasn't writhing around on the floor. Timothy Weah offered some threat as well. What did you make of sort of their wide options?
Yeah, I mean, in the first half, they're definitely causing them a lot of issues. Pulisic just seems so injury prone even when you watch him play. Like, he feels like every challenge really sort of affects him. But, you know, he's given that treatment for a reason. Like, he's a really confident dribbler. He can turn very well in tight spaces. I remember he seemed to have his best period of form in post-lockdown, I seem to remember, at the end of that season. I remember that amazing game. I think it was at Anfield, and Chelsea won that game. And Pulisic was electric that night. But unfortunately, he just hasn't been able to keep up his fitness in order to get into this Chelsea side consistently. In terms of where like England could maybe affect them as well, I feel like at right back was a bit of an error or an area of potential targeting for them really. And if it's Sterling off the left, if it's Foden coming in maybe, or Grealish at certain points during that game, Serginho Dest, for all his quality going forward and ability on the ball, does leave massive areas of space behind him. And DeAndre Yedlin's probably best days are behind him. So I think that could be an area that England can target. But overall, judging from the US-Wales game, and most opening games of World Cups are like this, but it didn't really fill me with that much fear. And given what we saw from Senegal-Netherlands earlier today, potential last 16 opponents from England as well, and England's result, it really was the perfect day for England. It's only one day, it's only one result, but I am feeling pretty confident as an England fan right now.
Yeah, I think a lot of England players will watch the US game against Wales back, and whether that be Foden, whether that be Sterling, will feel like they can attack that left-hand side and cause some damage. Zimmerman and Ream as well looked a little bit stretched at times when, like we mentioned earlier, that midfield three was separated and they weren't getting as adequate a cover, let's say, in front of them when Adams' legs are tired. So, yes, I don't want to sound cocky, but
that's my point.
I'm feeling pretty confident ahead of the US, but, maybe I've just better touch wood, don't want to curse us going into that. That is our preview of the US game. Please get your score predictions in the comments below. This is going to be one of two videos going live on Football Daily today, so keep your eyes peeled for the other, and go and check out our video on Euro Football Daily last night, basically breaking down the Netherlands-Senegal game, but we sort of moved the focus onto Gakpo because the game was pretty rubbish, wasn't it? So like this video, subscribe to the channel with notifications on, go and check out our other content, and we'll catch you in a bit.